Oh, what happened to your screen, Ross? There we go. Perfect. I'll let Bob introduce you.
Before we do the introduction, we have a little 5-minute presentation on some. All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the November 16th Illinois Homeopathic Association and Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy Joint Study Group. And I'm Bob Signori. And today we have two really good speakers that I'll introduce in a few minutes. But permit me just to introduce a new feature of the Illinois Homeopathic meetings, which we from time to time can have. And I'd like to introduce this new feature, and I'm naming it in honor of Dr. Joel Shepard, the Joel Shepard moment, the Dr. Joel Shepard moment. And so what do I mean by that? Well, basically, you know, Dr. Joel Shepard, for those of you who never met him, he really touched us in many really great ways. So this is just a way to honor him and remember him of some of the tips and pearls and clinical really cool things that he taught us. And sometimes it was through a formal lecture on the organon, and sometimes it was just a little tip or something in passing. Like maybe we were, after the meeting, we were walking over to Pita for lunch, and he mentioned something, and I said, wow, that's interesting, what's that about? And then he would tell me, and it was kind of like a little mini lecture, you know, after the lectures. So today I just wanted to mention my little experience. Dr. Shepard was giving, I think, a talk here, and he mentioned something about a remedy I never heard of before. He was talking about sulfuric acid, or maybe he wasn't giving the talk, but maybe he was sitting in the audience and somebody mentioned something about arnica and bruises, and he said something, yes, arnica is a very good remedy, but just remember, if arnica fails, remember sulfuric acid, and that's all he said. And so after the meeting, I think we were walking in Naperville to the lunch or something, and I said, so what about sulfuric acid? You know, I know it's one of the remedies in our Dunham kits that we all grafted, but I never used it. So he told me a little more about it. He said, well, for one thing, arnica is really good for yellow tinted bruises. And so maybe that's why it works good when arnica fails, because when the yellow starts showing up in ecchymosis and purpura, it's usually later on. So we'll always remember sulfuric acid because of Joel Shepard for when arnica fails, when you have a yellow tinted bruise. But the other thing is, the sulfuric acid patient is in the Materia Medicas is described as patients being in a great hurry. They do everything in a great hurry. They get really angry when people aren't working fast enough. So that's sulfuric acid. Another keynote of sulfuric acid is for aphthous ulcers, or you may know them as canker sores or aphthous stomatitis. Some people even say that sulfuric acid can work better than borax, which often is the go-to remedy that some people use. But because of Dr. Shepard, I'll remember sulfuric acid for old topers who are weak and broken down and almost wrecked by hard liquor. What's a toper? It's an old alcoholic, somebody that drinks too much hard liquor especially. And some of these old alcoholics that are really sick and broken down, they have a very strange as-if sensation. So they'll say, Doc, I'm trembling all the time. And you look at them, you palpate them, and they're not shaking. You don't feel any trembling. Their spouses don't feel or sense any trembling, but they say, I don't feel right. I feel like there's something shaking inside of me. So that's something we'll also remember because of Dr. Shepard. And the last thing is sulfuric acid. When people have hemorrhages from every orifice, or as they say in the Materia Medica, hemorrhages from every outlet of the body with ecchymose spots under the skin. So that means purplish bruised spots. Some people would call that purpura hemorrhagica. Later on, they called it purpura fulminans, purpura fulminans. And I think now you would call it DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation. So the person is so septic, they're so sick that, you know, their blood clotting isn't working. You know, it's clotting, but it's getting liquid, and they have these dark, oozy, thin hemorrhage. The type of person you'd see in the ICU at the last the last few hours of life before they die of sepsis. So you never know. You might have a patient like that and you may have some sulfuric acid with you in your kit. So for these and many reasons, we thank Dr. Joel Shepard for having me always remember the remedy sulfuric acid. And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker. It's Dr. Ross Rentia, and he is a Chicago physician. He specializes in alternative medicine, complementary medicine, but especially anthroposophic medicine, as espoused by Steiner, I believe, right? I believe so. Yeah.
Yes.
Who was also very important in the field of early child education as well, and you know, natural organic type gardening and things like that. So thank you very much. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Rentia, and he's going to be speaking on the clinical uses of oral potentized mistletoe extracts in the oncological and non-oncological illnesses.
Thank you. Well, dear homeopathic colleagues, I'm happy to be here. I'm honored that you want to have me. I'll just give you a brief synopsis of what direction I'm coming from, and that is that I've graduated in '76 from the U of C here in Chicago, and then I spent 5 years in Europe learning what's called anthroposophical medicine, which is an extended form of dealing with potentized remedies. Andrea, my wife, and I came back to Chicago in '83, started opening up the Paulina Medical Clinic, and that is still functioning. And then in '92, together with Tim Fior and others, we were part of the co-signers and founders of the IHMA. So that you know, makes me, in a sense, part of the family. Now I'm a more distant child of the family because I have not attended all the meetings. And I cannot see you clearly, but I hope that everybody's smiling by now. And nevertheless, my work with potentized substances has continued. And then later on, together with Dr. Mark Kamsler, who I believe is here with us, but I cannot see him, we have organized the True Botanica Company and the Lily Kolisco Institute for Anthroposophic Medicine. So those are the institutions that we are connected with. And if you have any questions at the end, what the relationship is and all of that, I can answer that. What I would like to talk about today is the mistletoe. The mistletoe as a substance, the mistletoe as a remedy. And I'd like to start with the fact that the mistletoe as an herbal extract has been known for centuries, especially in Europe, and it was and is as an herb, as a simple herbal extract, was used for lowering blood pressure, increasing fertility, and various and sundry non-specific uses, but it's known to have had a therapeutic value. However, in the 1920s, this man called Rudolf Steiner discovered, frankly, through spiritual vision, that if the mistletoe extract is prepared in a special way, it can be used for the treatment of cancer. And what those special ways were, I'm going to show you in a minute, because we're using that way also in making potentized oral remedies. So the fact that the cancer treatment was introduced in the 20s was very fundamentally new. It spread. Currently, the mistletoe is being substantiated as a cancer treatment through maybe a couple of hundred studies. Anyway, it's world famous. And right now, it's being more and more introduced into the States. However, what I want to talk to you about is the fact that, well, as many other treatments in the complementary world, the mistletoe treatment is not working completely to its promise. And that's why my friends, Andrea, Mark, and I thought we need to see if we can use the mistletoe differently, to add it to the concentrated mistletoe extracts, or to just give it as a standalone, but in a potentized form, because there you are also going to begin to address the soul constitution of the patient, so that we don't concentrate too much on the organic side alone, while the soul is continuing to do its, ill-equipped behaviors, but rather to see if, together with the other treatments, the oral potentized mistletoe might be very helpful at this other level. So that's what I want to talk to you about. So first of all, just in general, the mistletoe, which I hope, yes, you can see my screen here, is a very interesting plant, of course. And I'm going to mention actually only one characteristic from many, 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 which is that it's a semi-parasite that grows up in the branches of a variety of host trees. And because it is a semi-parasite and does not have roots, it sucks up, so to speak, the juices and the energy of the tree into its leaves and into its branches. So it forms this round ball of plant. But what's important is that it has this, that it in a sense, it potentizes what is substantiative and energetically in the tree. And that's important for us to keep in mind. And having said that, let me try to see if I can advance it a little bit. And I'll show you now how we, a little bit of how we make it, yeah? First of all, there is a particular kind of mistletoe called, so the Latin viscum, and the kind is album. So viscum album, coming from the word white, because it has white berries. It is an evergreen, and it grows preponderantly in Europe. At least that's where most of the studies have been done on it. There are studies now that are coming out of Asia, especially Korea, but by and large, when you hear about the anti-cancer mistletoe, the therapeutic mistletoe, you're always being referred to that it is the European mistletoe. So we were lucky, destiny, if you will, that we made a connection. We discovered a connection with a forester in Romania, and he is supplying us with mistletoe. Then after we get it, we go through a very careful analysis to make sure that we're getting the right thing, meaning that we do what's called organoleptic analysis, or rather visualization. We look at the leaves, we look at the berries, we make sure that they correspond to what we imagine that they should look like botanically. And then we also do some pretty sophisticated HPTLC analysis, where, as you can see it on this graph here, it can tell us not only that it is the mistletoe, but it also comes from different trees. So distinguish that. Now, the amazing thing is that Rudolf Steiner asked that certain steps be gone through in order to have a more therapeutic value than if you take the mistletoe from a tree, crunch it up, and put it in a bottle and sell it at the health food store the way it is done right now. And one of the things that he said was, you need to take, from a certain point of view, mistletoes that are from 6 months apart. But the classical is that you collect one at the beginning of the new year, Christmas time, New Year, and you collect the second one at the height of summer, at the end of June. St. John, if you know what that is. So you collect those two, and those two then need to be combined. And that he said out of his spiritual insight. But isn't it interesting that it actually turns out that the winter mistletoe has different characteristics from the summer mistletoe? One of them is higher in viscotoxin, the other one is higher in lectins. And when you combine them, now you're getting the most potent way of the mistletoe plant. So that's the one difficulty, so to speak, that you collect it at one time of the year, and then you really need to properly keep it over for 6 months until you have its companion, and then you mix the two. So what we do is that we carefully macerate it, and we get a paste. And then this paste gets obviously mixed with some distilled water. It's a completely non-alcoholic procedure that we're using. And we make sure, I'll come back to this slide in a second, and we make sure that when we get the summer and the winter mistletoe, we actually extract it all the way until we can test and see in these striations, whatever, not deposit, extracts that are coming to the surface, that we have extracted DNA, so that we've had a complete extraction from the biggest molecule to the very tiny ingredients that are in that mixture. So now let me go back here. And the reason why that's important is because the mistletoe has a unique characteristic, I think, which is that it has a genome that is enormous. So look at the apple tree. It has a genome that measures 1 picogram. Then the lungfish, which is a very primitive organism, 60. And the mistletoe, 103. So what does that mean? That means is that if you compare that with the genome of the human being, that is 3, you can see that something very special is happening here. And the simple, how should I say, the simple interpretation, or one of the interpretations, would be that the higher the genome, the more it means that the animal or the plant has gone way back into evolution, number one. Number two, that it is a very stable DNA, a very stable genome. So one can use that in cases like cancer, where you have this fragmentation of the DNA, the changes of the DNA that can occur. So I thought that that was interesting that I would mention that, okay? Then what we do, the next thing is that we expose it. So we expose the liquid extracts to the morning and the evening forces, because those are special energetic times of the day. Now, what you see here in front of you is the potencies of organs that we do. I did not have a good picture for the mistletoe, but I just wanted you to see what it looks like. We just simply put it outside, allow, the little bit of a time before sunup to come in, a little bit of the time before sundown and after sundown to illuminate them. So we believe that all of this adds some additional, strength to the extracts. So we've gone up to now to the fact that the host tree is important, the seasons are important, the extract is the kind of extract, non-alcoholic is important, and finally, what is also significant is how you combine now the summer and the winter mistletoe. And I will not go into much detail here, except to say that there are two principles: that one of the juices is dripping down, the other of the juices is rotating very fast centrifugally, and that's how they get mixed. And that is also very important pharmaceutically. And this is what it looks like then. Oh, by the way, in this particular case, you have the maple mistletoe that is being photographed here. That's what that mixture looks like. Then it gets filtered, and the leftover cake gets saved, and then we ash it so that we get the minerals and the ashes out of the mistletoe also, and add that to the final tincture. And then all of this now gets hand potentized. So every single batch, everything you get from us is hand potentized. And in general, we go up to D30 because in anthroposophical custom, it's not a custom, in the anthroposophical thinking, we consider to be D30, D50 to be already very high potencies, and we consider D7, D15 to be low potencies. So we potentize that. So now I would like to show you a little bit what these potencies are doing. And here you have some examples, and I will try to see if it lets me. No, it doesn't. Okay, so the window of us looking at each other covers part of my screen, so I will refer only to the first couple of them that I'm seeing here. The mistletoe from the hornbeam, the mistletoe carpinus, salix is the willow, acacia is also in the family of the locust tree, quercus is the oak, and here's what's happening. Very interesting. Sort of more, this part here is what I believe comes close to classical homeopathy, in the sense that in the beginning here, you have the low potencies, mother tincture, etc. Towards the right here, all of these, especially the gray, the brown, they are the high potencies, D29, D30. And you can see that our mistletoe is able, as it should, to destroy, to kill the cells that they have been cultured with, while the high potencies are doing the opposite. They're actually having a stimulating effect. So now let me go back for a second. In the beginning, 10 years ago or so, we did all of our experiments with seeds, and we noticed that we could develop that way already what is very important to us, and what we're struggling all these years for, and are going to struggle in the beginning, which is to have a means of validating the potency. So right now, the funny part is that when the FDA says to you, for example, we need to have a proof for the quality of your potencies, of your homeopathic remedies, they know that there are no cells, that there are no substances left at very high potencies. Once you go over D24 or 24X or 12C, if you will, there's no more substance there. So what they are asking is that, for example, whenever a potentizing process takes place, that you have two people there or more to actually witness that it's being done, and similar processes. Well, the question is, how do you know that that shaking that you've done has actually conveyed something to that potency that is actually active? So that's what we're struggling about. So in the beginning, we did it with seeds, and we call that, even now, excuse me, the so-called Colisco validation method. Lily Colisco was a coworker of Rudolf Steiner's, and she asked him for the first time, how can I show that this thing is working? And he told her, well, use seeds and see how the growth under the influence of one potentized substance compares with the control. So she did that, and she found that, yes, it works. She could tell. So we did that. Then, in the beginning, with about 3-4 years ago, we wanted to bring it more up to the so-called standards of science, which is to work in a cell culture laboratory. So what you see here in front of you is the non-small cell lung cancer cells, A27. They get put in a plate, 96 cell plate. Some of it is control, and then some of it gets treated with with mother tincture, low potency, and then high potencies. So these are the results that you see here in front of you. So for example, if you look at the carpinus, the mother tincture is completely killing the cells, even beyond 100%. Never mind why that is like that. But then the D30, the 30X, is going up 125 or so percent, stimulating. Now, what that means at this point, leave it for a second. I may have some comments about all of that in a minute. So this is just general to show you that we were able to work with potencies and show that they're actually active at very high levels. There's no more substance left there. So to us, that was already very satisfying that we could show that. So let's see if we can go beyond that. Okay, just a second. Activate my screen here. Okay, so I'm going to make some comments now that are relating to another thing that Colisco discovered. And again, I will try to see if I can adjust my screen a little bit so that, okay, it does. Just give me 1 second, dear friends. All right, just give me 1 second. Nope. Okay, it doesn't let me, that's okay. I cannot, I cannot comment on, I hope you can see my pointer. I cannot comment on here on the mold. It's sort of being, it's being covered by the camera. But I can make comments now about the sp2 cells. Here, I hope you can see my pointer moving, and down below. Okay, so 2 different cells. So what I want to show you here is that normally we assume that either the potency goes down or the potency goes up. It's either inhibiting or stimulating. And generally speaking, when we work clinically with potentized remedies, we basically say, well, this is a high potency, so a high potency does something different than the substance. But Lily Kolysko discovered that there is another phenomenon, which is that as you're progressing serially with the potencies, they have a semi-sinusoidal or rhythmical behavior. Meaning what? That if you look here on the left side of my screen where it says sp2 cells and Viscum abatis, which is from the fir tree, what happens is that if we look at the behavior of the potencies from D24 to 30, and we take the D24 as a control, we consider that to be 0. D25 is actually statistically significant higher, maybe stimulating. Then it goes down over 26, 27, 28. Finally, it comes to 229. That is significantly lower than D24. On the other hand, D30 begins to climb again. So it is here. So it is not actually statistically all that different from the D24. You can see the same thing here, in this on the lower right side, where the statistical difference from the 24 is, from the 24 goes down to 28, 29, but not to 30. So it is not always simple to say, I will use a 30x, but rather that ideally in the future, and this is aspirational a lot, okay, in the future, the work with potentized remedies will need to be enormously more accurate so that we actually know every potency, is it inhibiting or is it stimulating? Which one is real and which one is not? So even if we don't look at exactly what it does, because clinically it means something different, it's not always stimulating, it's not always inhibiting, but rather if we really need to know, is it just doing anything, then we will need to do experiments in the future to actually demonstrate that. So this is something a little bit that I wanted to share you about that. As a commentary on the side, if you look through the research work with potencies, you will notice that this semi-sinusoidal wavy line appears again and again, especially if you have in your library or whatever access to the Benveniste work. Then you will see that the same thing that he's able to demonstrate, the same thing in his work. But interestingly enough, nobody's paying attention to this. So this is something that anthroposophical research is trying to bring out. And I will show you at the end, I've published several articles on that, in peer-reviewed journals, that we need to begin to pay attention to this phenomenon because it is important for clinical use later on. Okay. So then I want to show you two examples that we've worked with recently that are going more into a practical direction, if you will. And here I'm showing you the linden or lime tree, and up in its high branches here, you can see that this one has a lot of mistletoe in it. And we have put the mistletoe of the lime tree, so the Viscum tiliae. We've put it through the same paces that I've shown you before. And we have seen what it does. And we were, as you can imagine, really very pleased when we did another slightly more sophisticated experiment where we actually looked at the ability to induce necrosis and apoptosis by these by the Viscum tiliae in the colon cancer cells. Okay, so this is how it works. If you look at the top where it says necrosis, you can see that the concentrated extract, the very low potencies up to D3, they're highly, highly necrotizing. And then when you go to the higher potencies, they don't kill the cells. On the other hand, if you look at the ability to induce apoptosis, meaning that the cells are not killed, but the cells are stimulated, so to speak. Now, it's a bad word, but stimulated to induce suicide, to commit suicide, to just clean themselves of material that is not needed and, you know, stop multiplying, stop passing on damaged information. It is precisely at the high potencies that the apoptosis is so active. Well, you can imagine that that was a very exciting moment for us to see that. Because what that means is that aside from what I'm going to tell you next that is important about the linden, you know, the lime, the tilia plant, and what it is used for. But if you just look at this thing here, the first thing that it hits you is that, oh, it actually helps to clean cells. But it is in the colon, it does that to the colon cancer cells. But we have made it, and it is available as a commercial product. I'll show it to you in a second, that you can take as oral drops. It goes into the digestive tract, and it has at least the promise that it will begin to have a cleansing effect, a detoxifying effect. I mean, this can be enormously beneficial. So that I want to talk to you about in a second. So if we, however, look into the literature, and we find that in the homeopathic literature, the homeopathic tilia is used for eye muscle weakness, neuralgia of the right side of the head proceeding to the left, dry nose with sneezing, an entire series of benefits to the female reproductive tract, soreness in the genitalia, etc., inflammation. And that is just another place where it completes the picture. Okay. Now, what I find, however, what we work with in anthroposophy a lot is the mythology, if you will, that is connected to the specific tree that the mistletoe is coming from. Because we believe that the mythology is not a fantasy, a story that somebody invented, but rather that coming out of spiritual perceptions, out of traditions that have come from times when people could still see more than we can see today, that those are the stories that were attached to the particular trees. And the linden tree has a very interesting story associated with it. And it is the fact that it was the tree, together with the oak tree, that the linden tree was in front of the little house of little, cottage of two old people called Philemon and Bauxis. And Philemon and Bauxis are mentioned in Ovid's Metamorphoses. And what happens is that in that village, Zeus and Hermes, the two gods, are coming down to earth to visit, and they knock on all the doors and nobody wants to let them in. And then finally they come to the hut of these poor people and they say, we don't have much, but come in, you're our guests. And they show great hospitality. To make a long story short, the rest of the village did not fare too well because the gods took the two old people with them, but they destroyed the rest of the village. Those were very, how should I say, rough times, but to a certain extent, just times, more than one can say today. So the point is that the linden tree that is right in front of that house is a symbol of hospitality and a symbol of loyalty and friendliness, so that one can keep that in mind together with that homeopathic picture of the female emphasis. It kind of gives you a picture to what kind of people you would want to give that to. For example, people that are not willing to accept anything anymore. They're just blocking the famous blockade or the non-compliance. We're starting to use with that, obviously, at this point, all I can talk to you about is bias, because sure, when you give something and you expect it, then that's what you're going to get back sometimes. Nevertheless, it's an interesting story that I wanted to show you in connection with a lab that actually worked. So I want to tell you one more. And that is, by the way, what it looks like. These things are made by the True Botanica company, simply www.truebotanica.com. And I don't want to emphasize that I'm not here to sell product, but I just wanted to let you know that, hey, yeah, it's available. We're actually doing it. All right, the next one that I want to tell you is a novelty, which novelty in the sense that in the anthroposophical literature, there are many mistletoes, many kinds of mistletoes that are being made. I will tell you in a second more in that direction, but nobody has ever done the robinia, Pseudoacacia robinia, also related locust. These are slightly variations on the theme, but it's the same family. Okay, and excuse me, and we were very interested in that because we had the possibility of getting some robinia mistletoe. So we've looked into it to see what is there anything special about this tree? And it's just amazing what mythology, what spirituality is surrounding the robinia tree. It's in essence in one of the. So I'll tell you two of them that are really special. One of them is that the god Osiris in the Egyptian mythology is being killed by Typhon, And then he is being rescued by ISIS, but she needs to hide him in the Robinia tree until she can liberate him from there. So then he gets killed again, and she rescues and puts him back together again. So that's one image. Kind of keep that in mind for a second. But the second image is that in the Hebrew tradition, when Moses was asked to make the case of the covenant, he makes it out of Robinia, out of acacia. That's the variety of acacia. He makes it out of acacia tree. And that, I'm not using the right word, forgive me, the right box, is a representation of the ever presence of God. Those are two images. But another image is that people that are well known and very specializing in tree mythology, they describe other characteristics of the tree that at the end can be all summarized as what I would like to call as a motto of the tree: perseverance in the face of difficulties. So I've written down a couple of things that are important. For example, it is best given to patients that have lost faith in the possibility of healing, people that cannot let go of previous traumas, the sensations in the body, that it's all unruly, splitting sensations. The soul life cannot keep things together because they go into various directions, having difficulty with changes and traditions, having excessive worrying, that it's in that direction. Okay, so now we have used now Robinia for better part of a year, more, maybe a little, no, actually more, 2 years. And we have found that it is actually very successful. So my friend Mark Kamsler has gathered a series of cases like that, all the way from a 3-year-old to a 7-year-old to a 71-year-old, people who had sleep difficulties, who had various types of anxiety, but also other conditions that I will add right now. And that is the following: that the Robinia tree in the homeopathic materia medica, if you will, is being associated with stomach acidity. So we've given it to people that had a variety of soul problems, but especially in those where there was also some digestive problem. And as I said, we have a number of these, and we've actually published an article on that. So those seem to work well. Now, because of the time here, I'm going to go to one or two more ideas, and then I'm finished. And I've just gone through that. Excuse me. So I will leave that. I'm just wanting to show you that this, cleansing apoptosis business, we have noticed it in many other mistletoes, like Mali, poplar, and so on, Robinia. I just want to tell you that that's, these are some of the articles that we've published to show that potencies work, that the rhythms work. In fact, at the beginning of next year, something is coming up that is relating to being able to demonstrate that the forces of the moon as it transits through different sidereal constellations are different. I find that very significant, because if you just talk of full moon, new moon, people will say, well, that's gravitational force that is involved. So you can find that, by the way, on the Colisco website. If you look, for example, this year on the annual report that we've put out, you can find these studies there. You can find them again. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to tell you is that anthroposophical doctors work specifically or a lot with 7 trees, and you can see them listed here at the bottom: hornbeam, ash tree, cherry, oak, elm, maple, and birch. These were the trees that were used to make columns in this building that does not exist anymore. Unfortunately, perished to fire because it was all made out of wood. And these 7 trees represent 7 evolutionary epochs. So I will just simply leave it at that. It's, the conversation would take us to a different direction right now. But the reason why I mentioned it is because we are making homeopathically active potencies from the roots of these 7 trees. And the only thing that I want to accomplish with that slide today is the fact that I wanted to show you that we're having activities in various directions, not just the mistletoe, not just the trees here, other substances. We try very much to validate in some fashion our potencies. And with that, I want to thank you. Hopefully you can see my full screen, and not just in the upper right corner here is our chief researcher there, and these are the rest of us. This is my staff. We thank you very much, and we would be so grateful if at the end of the year you would send a small donation to the Colisco Institute, which is a non-for-profit organization, tax deductible, so that we can continue some of the research. I thank you, dear friends, for your attention.
I have a question for you, Dr. Rentia.
Yeah.
Do you have data on trying out the potencies that you mentioned on patients? So clinical application data?
We do not have that data, except for what I told you, that we did a series on the Robinia to collect a couple of patients, and we've published that, but no, not yet big clinical data.
So, and you also mentioned that potency at, so the lower potencies were inhibitory, causing necrosis, or I'm sorry, the reverse way, and then some of the potencies were stimulating. Do
Yeah.
you think we can, or you have a preparation that would follow, like why not give both potencies, so one would kill and one would stimulate, the good and the bad? Do you think that
Absolutely.
is, am I
Absolutely.
thinking correctly?
Absolutely, yeah, you could do that.
Okay.
It's also a matter of it's also a matter of demand. You know what I'm saying? So right now we just wanted to make sure that we have at least sometimes a low potency, not always, but that we always have a D30. So at least we can have a high potency that people can use at the so-called soul level.
Dr. Rentia, one quick question. Can you go back to one of your last slides that has the 7 trees that you guys use?
Can do that, yes.
How about one before that, with when it's spelled out? Oh,
Bean, ash, cherry, oak, elm, maple, birch.
Is that the one you wanted?
that's the one, thanks. And Dr.
No.
Question?
I'm sorry, go ahead, what?
Go ahead, go ahead.
So one of your colleagues, one of your anthroposophical colleagues, Thomas Cowan, has written a lot. He wrote an interesting book recently on cancer, suggesting that he got a lot of flack for it because he suggested that the structured water in cells is becoming unstructured, have more to do with cancer than genetics. But he mentions in his book on cancer that, viscum album is, that it is used. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence in anthroposophical medicine that it's used in cancer. But his statement was that it's useful for like certain types of cancer, certain stages, like not necessarily, I think he mentioned it wasn't like late stage, but like people in early stage, in remission, or I don't know, something like that. Has that been your experience? And I wonder, maybe these different preparations from different trees would, and different strengths of different, viscums from different trees could have different effects.
Well, excuse me, that's the whole point. So what, let's see, I will give you a slightly more comprehensive answer than you might want. So the point is that, well, okay, let me just say this first. I'll give you 2 answers. One of them is that, there is no cancer, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as anybody's concerned, before you have a change in your mental life, in your soul life. I call it soul life, you want to call it mental life, whatever, okay? And the trauma that comes from the outside, that is well known to be able to cause cancer, that trauma can come from the inside also. We all know that, but let's do it practically. And that is this, that if you now come and say, oh, there is a cancer there, let me give an injection that does a lot of things on another levels, goes into the spiritual too. Yes, I know that. But basically, it attacks the cancer itself. How it does that is the whole another discussion, yeah? But what I'm amazed at is that we don't do it automatically, that we say, well, let's also give a highly potentized remedy. Let's call it for a second a homeopathic remedy, because we also want to address that soul life that originally caused the thing to begin with. So the question is, should we do that? Well, the answer is yes, because what I need to tell my patients, and I have a lot of cancer patients that I'm giving mistletoe to, what I need to sort of emphasize all the time is that we cannot leave that soul life alone. We need to help it to change. So, for example, it turns out that if you look at the birch tree, well, we know that the birch. Well, actually, we don't know that. I would need to explain it. What planet it is related to, what mood it is related to, and so on. I'm sort of getting too far out here. Let me just simply say that, yes, the 2 things should be given together. Mental improvement, cancer, attacking the cancer, if you will, because there's got to be a reason why, after 100 years, we've made enormous improvements in the mistletoe injections. but it still has not gotten to the point where it reliably cures a cancer. Now, my patients live, instead of 6 months, they live 15 to 20 years. Yes, it's true, but they don't get cured, okay? They still have to struggle with it. So that's what I'm hoping that these drops will do. Okay. Now, to the thing that I was mumbling about before, which I don't like to do, is this, that if you go on the Colisco website, we have put there several articles that explain more about the spirituality of the mistletoe, the energetics of the mistletoe, and what we do in one of those articles is that we explain how trees are connected in their quality to 7 types that are connected to 7 types of human behavior, types of people. And if you pay attention to that, for example, one that everybody can understand is if you have a Saturnian type person, sort of not like me, right? Thin, tall, dark, Saturn, okay? Also, homeopathically, that would be your typical Nat Muir, yeah? Then that would be the kind of mistletoe that you would give for that type of person. So that would be the Carpinus or the hornbeam mistletoe. On the other hand, if you have a very, a very outflowing person, the woman who's taking care of her family, never for herself, doesn't know when to stop, just gives, Venus, okay? Then you would pick something from a tree that is associated classically with Venus, and that's the birch tree. So there you have the two, extremes. How's that?
Good, good. We find the same thing in our way of doing homeopathy too, that with cancer patients, oftentimes a chronic remedy, maybe they're phosphorus, sulfur, the patient will feel better, but the tumor will continue to grow. So it's like you need to give that remedy, but then you need to give something that's specific for the tumor too, because it's almost like the tumor is another entity there, and genetically it is.
That's it. That's it. It's like another entity. I love that word. Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to comment too on the sinusoidal. Last time you presented on the, I think 10, 15 years ago, you presented on the seedlings and how the sinusoidal curve, and now you're showing it with the cancer cells. That's very interesting. And like you said, Ben Denise, they saw that. We're using now H potencies where if we're using a remedy for a patient, we have a lymphoma patient who's on CPM, we've gone all the way up to MM, and it always keeps helping her. And then once she doesn't react to that, we run it under water for an hour, and that becomes MM plus 1H, and then 2H and 3H. And it's interesting, the same sinusoidal thing happens. She, with the odd potencies, like 1, 3, 5, now she's up to 200 and whatever. The odd potencies last 2, 3, 4 weeks. The even potencies only last about 2 weeks. So there's a difference in effect. So it's something inherent in the dosing. There's this variation, this fluctuation, but it's a kind of a reliable fluctuation.
Wow, that's interesting.
It was very interesting, and it's something that you're one of the few people, and maybe the only one I've ever seen who really puts a finger on that and says, there's something here, this is important. Ben Denise made a comment to it. You're the one I've seen that really kind of emphasizes that. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah. Listen, Tim, I have a question. How do you tell when you say this lasts and then it doesn't last in that direction?
The patient goes by her energy. Like, she'll take a dose, she'll be taking it, she'll take it maybe daily. And it's helping my energy, and then no, it's not anymore, so I need to go up. So when it loses its effect on the energy, and that's usually by, again, like I said, the odd potencies last longer. 3 weeks. The other ones last on average maybe 2 weeks. And it's reproducible. And I never had an idea this could be possible, but she said, I noticed this. And then I started checking it, and yeah, it's like that.
No, absolutely. My wife, Andrea Rentia, she's still practicing seeing patients, but she has, of course I'm exaggerating. I'm just, trying to paint a picture here, but she has 100, homeopathic remedies, on her side of the counter. And, I'm asking her, how do you do that? What do you see there? Oh, she says, if I don't take that remedy for 3 days, then I get my joint relief. My joint pains. And if I don't do this, then I do that. So it's always such a, such a God-given, such a blessing when you have somebody who's sensitive. Yeah.
Yep.
Because that can guide you a little bit. Oh yeah. So this is what I want to say, that can guide one. Yeah. A decent proving can be valuable. Why? Because it shows you that something is real. Yeah. But you can understand my excitement that I can actually show it that these spiritual forces go all the way into the laboratory. The same thing, I suppose, that if we do it with plant remedies where nobody can say that there's a placebo, you know the story, you're all experts. But to actually, to see it in the cells, that was, and the explanation to it, that was an exciting moment for us. And I hope for you too.
Yes, it shows, homeopathic remedies work in animals. We have that's online, in people and plants and cell cultures. Amazing.
They do. They do.
I have one more question, Dr. Rentia. So how do you choose the remedy for the cancer patients? Do you go by the similimum, or it's more colon cancer, so you get this preparation? And if you have lung cancer, then you get this preparation.
We do both. We do by the type of person, and we do by the organ.
And the result is still, the goal is to choose to choose some form of mistletoe, potentized mistletoe.
In my case, for what I practice with a lot of mistletoe, the answer is yes. Now, do we do other remedies also? I learned something. I've learned something great this morning by listening to Bob talk about sulfuric acid. Cancer is a sore. It's a sore condition. Yeah. That, you know what I'm saying? One can have a lot of opportunities, but I'm talking to you today about the mistletoe.
Got it. All right, thank you. I just wanted to also announce to everybody online, if you have questions, kindly raise your hand and I will unmute you to participate. I see Dr. Davis has a question, and I'm going to unmute you, Dr. Davis.
You might have to unmute yourself too, Elizabeth.
Okay. Dr. Davis? I don't know what happened.
She might have to unmute herself. On the control panel, there's a little microphone. You have to click it until it turns green. It's usually orange, but it turns green. Maybe she typed a question, Amishi?
She did type a question, but I want her to say that herself, because I'm not sure. So, okay, I'll tell in case if she's unable to join. Dr. Davis says using miasm to be more specific with remedy choice.
I cannot answer that question. I don't work with miasms concept.
Okay.
Dr. Antilla, just Bob Signori here. Quick question. So from a botanical standpoint, does the mistletoe plant weaken and eventually kill the host tree, or does it not kill it?
It never kills the tree. The mistletoe, that's one of the amazing things, isn't it? That it stays evergreen. Yeah, that's it. It never kills the tree. Yeah.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, we can hear you, Elizabeth.
Okay. Well, when you started to talk about the morphology, that's what I thought of as miasm. When you were being more specific based on individual morphology and how that helped to make you more specific in your type of remedy.
Okay.
And then when you look at the trees, the birch is such a big liver drainer. And if the emunctories are clogged, when you use the mistletoe to attack and break down, the birch opens up the emunctories so the toxic accumulation can make its way from inside outside. So I just think this is really great.
Nice addition. Thank you for your comment. Okay, well, maybe everybody takes a break before the next contribution.
All right. Once again, thank you very much. How about a round of applause for Dr. Antilla? Very good.
So interesting.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So in the next couple of minutes, we'll ask our next speaker to come up to the electronic podium, if you will, Dr. Rosie Ramirez.
All right, Ross, let's see if Rosie's here. Yeah, I'm gonna make her the presenter. Thank you, Ross. Bob up here to introduce you. And do you have a presentation? We need your audio. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, now we can hear. Do you have a presentation?
Okay. So you need it that way?
Let me do it again. Let me make you the presenter. Well, you already are the presenter. You just have to accept it.
Yeah.
You have to accept.
Oh, let me. Already did it. Hold on.
Here, let me make me the presenter again. And then I'll go back to you so you see. Here's my screen. And now I'm going to go back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have to accept being presenter. There should be like a little window that says, a pop-up window that says, do you accept being presenter?
Yeah, I said yes.
Okay, I don't see your presentation now. Can you guys see it online, her presentation online?
No?
She'd have to share their screen first to do that. So she would have to accept being the presenter. And then down at the bottom somewhere, I can't see it on my, there's an icon that'll say share screen. It's there usually in the GoToWebinar thing down at the very, very bottom of your window, there'll be a a white icon that will show your video, and then one for your mic, and then go to the right. There'll be a little icon that'll say share screen. And so it's a two-step process, Rosie. You know, Tim, that home base will ask you to be the presenter, and then your next thing to do is just share your screen.
Yes, but I already accepted.
Okay, yeah, but there's another step apparently. There, let me go back. I'm going to show my screen. It says show my screen. I click and then you have to click on show your screen. Let me go back to you. And you have to click on show my screen. It should be a pop-up window.
Yeah, that's the first time it appears that part. So let me see if you can see my screen now.
Did you click on show my screen? Here, let me try again. I'll make me the presenter.
Yeah.
I'm going to show my screen. Can you see my screen, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so you see my desktop. So I accepted it. And now I'm going to go back to you, Rosie. Okay, now you have to accept it. There's like an accept, show my screen. There we go.
Beauty.
Yeah, got it. Now we can see you.
Okay, so go to my presentation. Here it is.
Perfect.
Okay.
And
So
then you,
no, you don't need that one, right?
yeah, you probably want to put it on presentation mode.
The last button there, a couple over. Yeah, that one, exactly. Click on that. And if you go up under,
Oh, I can't.
yeah, one of those buttons up at the top. Yeah, that will switch it to, there you go. That's it.
There you go.
And how I see my notes.
What's that?
And how I can see my notes.
Then you'll have to go back to the other mode, and then you can see your notes.
But you are gonna see them, right?
No, yeah, then we would, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I prefer to see my notes because I know the native English speaker.
She might not have a Mac. Do you have a Mac or a PC?
Mac.
If you have two windows open, but you can only see one at a time, and you want to go back and forth between the two, you should be able to swipe your screen sideways.
With one finger, two fingers?
I don't know.
Three fingers? Three fingers? If you do a, here. If you have two windows open and you're going between the two, if you just swipe with three fingers across your trackpad, it should go between the two.
Okay, let me check. I haven't tried that.
If you have them open, like your green button, you have them to the top. Like I can swipe it. I don't know. Okay. Is it working? No. I don't have a. Okay, you have this open, which is your presentation, right? That's your presentation.
Yes, that's my presentation.
Okay. But you have another screen that you might want to show something? Do you have other things you might want to show? That you said you can't show at the same time? Okay. So, I don't know if I misunderstood.
I did it.
So you can get it to go back and forth between your screens?
Yep.
So, okay, good. So that makes it easy.
Yeah. So you can see the whole panel, right? No notes.
Oh, okay, so you just,
That's fair.
is that yes?
Yes, but yeah.
Yes. So
Okay.
swipe it across right now. Let's see what you see.
Okay.
Okay, whatever works.
Okay. But it is working for you. You cannot see my notes, right?
See your notes.
Ready when you are.
Dr. Ramirez, you might just want to try, just advance your slides to the third or the fourth and see what are you seeing. And then we'll be able to confirm if we can see your notes.
No, you're
Yeah.
good. You're good.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is okay for you as well?
A better doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just see the main slide, Rosie.
Okay, that's okay. So it's working for both ends, in both ends. Okay.
Do you want to see us? Dr. Rentia wanted to see us. Do you want to see us or you want me just,
I don't
It's
mind.
nice, Dr. Fior. I would like to see you and everybody else in the room. I'm just surprised that we didn't think of this earlier. This is so nice.
well, actually it was Ross. Ross really said, I want to see the crowd. He's the first one who's ever asked.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. He's the first one to ever ask. Oh, well.
All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rose Ramirez. And actually, we haven't had anybody give us a lecture from another country since I think it was Dr. Mabudike from Romania, and that was a while ago. So this is quite an honor and a treat. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Rose Ramirez, and she practices in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, Mexico. And her website is thenaturalvets.com.mx. And she's going to be telling us all about the homeopathic approach to canine idiopathic epilepsy with successful outcomes.
Okay. So when I started studying homeopathy for animals, it was in 2015. And my very first case was a distemper patient with neurological signs and digestive problems. I was so nervous to prescribe in this patient, but the owner didn't want to put to sleep the dog. So she was looking for alternative options. She found us. She started with my husband, a treatment with acupuncture and herbs, but at some point, no more improvement was done with the patient and decided to try with homeopathy. So it was my very first case, a distemper case. And after some months, the patient was doing well. And almost 10 years later now, she is still alive. And it was so scary at that point. It was hard because it was my very first case and was a chronic case. My veterinary mentor probably was so annoyed by me with every single question, my anxiety plus the owner anxiety. But I learned a lot with that case. Now I treat with much more confidently these cases, but with a really deep respect because they're not easy. Okay, where are we going to see this lecture? The lecture is done in 4 steps. First, we're going to see what is epilepsy, then some studies related to homeopathy and seizures, and then how Hahnemann taught us how to see the patients, and then the cases I have to show you. What are the objectives? These are not objectives for you. They are objectives for the patient, to enhance the quality of life, to reduce or eliminate the seizures, minimize the side effects of drugs, the conventional ones, and to prevent the neurological damage that that disease per se has. So let's start with what is epilepsy in part 1. Epilepsy is a chronic neurological disorder characterized by recurrent epileptic seizures. The definition of epilepsy in veterinary literature focuses on the presence of recurrent seizures. Idiopathic epilepsy is a condition without an identifiable cause and with a possible genetic predisposition. The first seizure occurs between 6 months and 6 years of age, although occasionally seizures start as early as 3 months of age or as late as 10 years. The status epilepticus is one continuous seizure lasting more than 10 minutes. In a cluster seizure episode is 2 or more seizures within a 24-hour time period. Epilepsy is the most common naturally occurring chronic neurological condition in dogs. It has been estimated to occur at a frequency of 0.5 to 5 and 7% in the canine population. From an owner perspective, cluster seizures and status epilepticus are not well tolerated. So they start medicating their pets under veterinary care and obviously conventional medications. When we do homeopathic treatment, most of them the outcomes are very rewarding when we find a good simulant or a really good partial remedy and a good or appropriate case management. We must be cautiously approached to the strong medication the patient already has. So when we have a situation that we have a lot of conventional medications, the patient most of the times is really suppressed or palliated, and it's really difficult to differentiate from the original disease. And sometimes we get really frustrated when the patient is not responding well to homeopathy. So let's explore 3 different studies and how they connect to the aphorisms in the organon. This is one study, epilepsy and seizures classification in 63 dogs, a rephrasal of veterinary epilepsy terminology. I'm going to read these 2 sentences. A number of the clinical signs involving sensations described in humans cannot be confirmed in animals. However, if questioned, dog owners frequently report subtle changes in their animal's behavior. Some of these changes in behavior were caused by a distortion of perception, either immediately preceding convulsions or existing as an isolated phenomenon, constituting the entire seizure. Brief, recurrent, stereotyped changes in behavior, motor signs, or automatic clinical signs, with or without impairment of consciousness, should be recognized as a possible clinical expression of an epileptic focus, giving rise to seizures with a partial onset. Experimental evidence indicates that dogs may indeed suffer from simple or complex partial seizures, manifested with a variety of clinical signs other than a simple motor malfunction. In both veterinary and human epileptology, partial seizure onset can be subtle and followed by a rapid secondary generalization, making it difficult to detect the partial onset. So we can see subtle changes. What can we relate with the organon and the aphorism for a deeper understanding? And we have to let the patient talk, in this case is the owner, to obtain the information from the patient relations, to observe the patient, write the case accurately, do not interrupt, and we are allowed to see from the patient. And now that I'm in it as well in human homeopathy, how the patient interacts with a human, with the owner. So we can see both ends, or how we can mirror, how they mirror both of them. The physician sees, hears, and notices through the remaining senses what is altered or unusual about the patient. And now with a lot of videos and things like that, it gets easier for us. In aphorism 89, Hahnemann says, the patient's own account of his sensibilities is usually the most reliable. Of the accounts received from the patient and from others, most belief is to be attributed to the patient's own account with respect to his sensibilities. So we are talking about keynotes. In this second study, clinical management of idiopathic epilepsy in dogs with homeopathic belladonna 200C, a case series. By the way, I'm not going to show you my very first distemper case and my first chronic case when I was studying veterinary homeopathy, but this is the picture of the two dogs that were in the same family, and the schnauzer one is the distemper one 1 year ago. And she looks great. Okay, so in this study, they tell us epilepsy is an important neurological disorder in dogs. Belladonna 200C was evaluated in 10 dogs with idiopathic epilepsy. During the seizure phase, 3 or 4 drops of belladonna 200C were administered orally at 15-minute intervals until a considerable reduction of seizure activity them 4 times daily. For dogs with head shaking syndrome, in addition to seizures, we're giving calculus, say 6C, 3 or 4 drops orally weekly for 3 months in addition. The numbers of fits reduced to 2-3 during the first 2 weeks post-therapy. No fits were observed during 2 7 months follow-up. In 2 cases, epilepsy fits reappeared within 15 to 25 days after cessation of therapy. Belladonna therapy was resumed and seizure control was again achieved. Owners were advised to continue the therapy at least twice daily until there were no fits for 2-3 months. Liver-specific enzymes were monitored and no abnormalities were found. The abrupt cessation of therapy sometimes precipitated the seizure episodes. It seems that belladonna needs to be continued for a quiet, a long period, at least 2 to 3 months. What is studies telling us? Hahnemann says antibiotic treatment focuses on a single disease symptom, bringing forth a medical symptom that is opposite to the disease symptom. So in this study, even though homeopathic medication were prescribed, they didn't pay attention to what? To the whole patient, the totality of the symptoms. They didn't evaluate the overall being of the patient if it was had improved during the treatment process. The approach in this study was limited to monitoring only the seizures as the primary symptom. This focus on a single symptom inevitably leads to outcomes centered most of the times on palliation or suppression. The third study I want to show you is a randomized blind and controlled clinical trial to assess the effect of oral cannabidiol administration in addition to conventional anti-epileptic treatment on seizure frequency in dogs with intractable idiopathic epilepsy. They were evaluating the effects, and in this case, in this study, the owners were asked 100 questions related to behavior of the dogs before and at the end of the treatment. The clinical pathological abnormality noted during the study was a significant increase in serum ALP activity in the CBD group from 0 to 12 compared to the placebo group. The drug interactions or potentization could happen. We have conventional medications as well, natural supplements and formulations, plus CBD in some cases. So what we should proceed when we have all these sort of conventional drugs or natural ones sometimes, and we don't have a patient with a clear picture. So in aphorism 91, Hahnemann taught us the treatment of patients on medication. The befallments and condition of a patient during some previous course of medication do not give the pure image of the disease. On the other hand, symptoms and ailments suffered before the use of medicine or several days after discontinuing its use are genuine, the fundamental concept or the gestalt of the disease. And the physician must record this in particular, very difficult in a convulsive patient, right? So what would be our ideal or dream scenario for an epileptic patient? Being all the homeopath. We aim to work with patients we are not currently on medications, as certain drugs can obscure the true symptomatology and make it challenging to assess the patient's real clinical picture accurately. However, in today's medical world, such cases are increasingly rare, especially in seizures, where pharmacological drugs are necessary due to the severity and urgency of the symptoms. So let's go to part 4 with the cases. This is the case number 1. This patient, I saw her on October 4, 2017, and the chief complaints were allergies and seizures. The general history of this patient is a crossbreed female dog, 4 years at that time, with frequent ear infections, strong and foul odor, skin infections with scabs, and excessive itchiness. The most painful, obviously, for the owners were the seizures that started showing 1 year ago. I don't have the exact story of the history of this patient because at the beginning of my homeopathy consultation, I was doing everything by hand on paper, and this file was lost in an accident, a car accident. So I don't have the full records anymore of this patient, but trust me that I gave you what I remember, and I talked with the owner the previous year when I present this lecture for the first time. Okay. This patient was treated with Lachesis mutus 200C on a single dose. The patient started experiencing itchiness and a lot of ear discharges after that single dose. We didn't see, the owner and I, no seizure as an aggravation or counteraction. She was free of seizures for several months, and after approximately 3 to 5 months later, the patient started having more seizures. And again, the remedy was redosed, that's the right word, not reduced, redosed at the same potency in one single dose. I usually use wet doses. At that time, the patient was advised to not use vaccines anymore. A natural food was provided and supported care for itchiness, like aloe vera or oat baths and things like that. The owner was really good doing that part of the process, and the patient was really well. The patient, after the course of the years, was examined annually and as needed for episodes of increasing itchiness and ear discharges. After probably 1 or 2 years, she received again vaccinations and experienced a few minor health issues, including skin troubles and throat problems. Each time, lachesis has proven to be the remedy, just as it was during her first treatment. Today, 10 years later, 10 years old, I started with, she was 4. She has been seizure-free for the past 4 years, making a significant improvement in her journey and with the owners as well. I heard of her in 2023, not in 2024. Hopefully she's doing fine, but she has been free of seizures and just with lachesis. What can we find with seizures and lachesis? Just focusing on that part of the remedy. The epilepsy comes on during sleep from jealousy, onanism, and loss of fluids, chorea. Delirium tremens with mucus, with much trembling and confusion. The trembling of the whole body, of hands, tongue, etc. Epilepsy, diphtheria, paralysis, and other disorders, great mental and physical tension. The delirium tremens and much trembling and confusion. There's a rapid onset, intensity, prostration, or malignancy. Ascending sensation, excessive painfulness, you know, the hypertension that lachesis has. That child must be held, in these cases, that the pet must be held to relieve the head and chest and prevent shaking. Feels better if held or pressed down. The convulsive attack seems to begin in the lower limbs. The epileptic attacks are preceded by cold feet, palpitation of the heart, bloating of the abdomen, belching, heaviness of the head, vertigo, headaches, and paleness of the face. Epilepsy from onanism or otherwise connected with the sexual function after great lewdness, jealousy, seminal emissions during menses, during the climacteric period, and during sleep. That's a great remedy in pets that have a lot of masturbation problems. Puerperal convulsions in lower limbs and coldness of feet, stretching backwards of the body, and screaming. So lachesis in this case has acted really well along the years, and I haven't changed the prescription, not a single time.
Dr. Ramirez, what led you to lachesis in that case?
I don't have the original repertorization because I couldn't find it. However, one of the things was the anger, was the onanism or masturbation was the aggravation during the night and after touching. And yeah, that's what I remember from that patient, really anger patient and trying to bite. And I focuses on seizures, but not that much at that time. It was my probably second or third probably patient with seizures. So I didn't have a lot of experience doing a good, really good repertorization at that time. So my main focus was much more on the masturbation and the angerness and yeah, and how the patient was showing that anger at that time.
Question? May I ask a question?
Yep.
Okay. I was kind of curious as to the significant rubrics. And you said, so it's anger before a seizure? You would
No,
see,
not for seizures.
okay, but I'm curious, when you talk about masturbation and you talk about an animal, what are you looking at? Are you talking about the dog humping somebody's leg? What are you?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, sometimes in the leg, or they have another pet, or they grab the pillow or something, and they start humping and humping and humping.
So that's based on the nature of the animal in general that's having the seizures.
Yes.
So the seizures themselves, what do the owners report any significant observation when the seizure occurs that you would recognize?
Repeat the last part, please.
So do the owners report any significant observation of their pet during the seizure or just before the seizure that you would consider significant to identify the
Yeah,
seizure?
probably yes. But as I told you before, I lost the whole history of this patient. So probably there is much more there.
Okay.
And but I lost the history of this patient, but because everything I was writing down at the beginning, and so I don't remember something specific for that pet.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Rosie, before you go on, I'm gathering up a few questions from the chat, and one of them was just what you answered. That the rubrics are somewhere in the ditch somewhere. Also, I was just wondering if the dog was on any seizure medication when you started treating him, and also has the dog been vaccinated for rabies, or had the dog been vaccinated for rabies?
Yeah. Yes, this dog was fortunately enough to not have any medications. So it was a true picture of the patient. And yes, he was vaccinated before, not when I started treating her at the beginning, probably 1 or 2 years. And then the owner started vaccinating this dog again, but no more seizures were presented, even
That's
though he was vaccinated.
That's interesting. So we see a lot of epilepsy, particularly after rabies vaccine, and
Exactly.
we know that with a broad brush, that lachesis in animals can sort of be the listen equivalent in humans as well,
Exactly.
often. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a great case that even though I don't have the whole story, um, or history of this patient, it was a really great case to show you because it was right on the target.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah, and the well-being of this patient was, yeah, I was able to touch her after 3 or 4 months of treatment, and it was a completely different dog. Not with anger anymore, and yeah, the dynamic in the house with other dogs changed. So it was really amazing how this patient improved.
Thanks.
Okay, another question.
I see nothing here
Okay.
for questions.
Okay, let's move to case 2. Okay, this case was, I saw this patient in September 6th, 2021, and the chief complaint were seizures. The general history of this patient is a male mixed poodle, 8 years old, neutered. 3 or 4 years ago, had the first seizure, just one event. He was moving backward, panting, and breathing with difficulty. He has had approximately 2 or 3 seizures in a year, but upon presentation, he has had many seizures in a short period of time. That's when I started seeing this case, this patient. The patient has had tics in the past and now receives Bravecto. Probably you already know that it's a preventative for ticks and fleas. And had an appointment with a neurologist. No apparent abnormalities at that time were found. Only minor skin problems treated with antifungal medicines. The current symptoms were cluster seizures and skin problems. I discussed it with the owner the potential side effects of this product, and it was discontinued. This patient didn't have any medication, conventional medicine at all. So it was another good case to watch. The physical exam and additional information in this patient. The physical exam was normal. So just slightly bradycardic, the heart was slightly with a lower rhythm. In the blood work, the only anomaly were platelets slightly low. Before the pandemic, this was a super active dog and friendly, and now it's a lazy one. This had a lot of fears with thunderstorms, and that's when he starts sometimes the seizures, snores a lot, and looks for fresh areas. He has Gladys and acid reflux sometimes. This is my initial repertorization. So the stronger thing for me was fear for thunderstorm, and he wanted to have company. I just used this general rubric, convulsions. I should be much more accurate. There's a lot of remedies there, so not very good rubric for convulsions. The general's warm aggravates. It's a very warm dog. And the skin eruptions itchy. It's very broad. So at that time, I decided to go with phosphorus, 200 C1 dose, followed by phosphorus Q1, 2 drops diluted 2 ounces of water every 24 hours. I had 2 follow-ups with this patient in September and October in 2021. no more seizures were present. But in December, he had seizures again, cluster seizures, and in November was vaccinated against rabies. So I did 2 repertorizations with a rubric generals, vaccination, ailments after, and the same ones from the previous repertorization. And phosphorus still fits. However, the owner told me, doctor, I noticed that this time the dog was really making a really weird face, like smiling. It was like a very, very big smile. So I said, okay, let's see if something comes up differently. And I went to this new one repertorization, and I read stramonium and decided to try stramonium. I gave it stramonium 200C, just 1 dose, and wait. I saw this patient until February. I saw this patient in December, gave stramonium 200C, and then in February, I repeated 1 single dose because another seizure was present. In July, it wasn't during pandemic period, so I didn't see the patient very often. So in July, the patient was okay. And in January, decided to go back to phosphorus, like the constitutional remedy for the patient. And it was fine during a whole year. No more seizures were present. And right now, 2024, I moved this patient to CalFOS, basically based on some eruptions and some ear discharges and some other things related with the constitutional treatment. I think I was much more accurate this time with this patient. I didn't add the new repertorization, but this patient I have had like 8 months right now with under CalFOS, and is doing much better. No ear discharges, and is doing well. So nothing more to add in this case. And again, not treated with allopathic medicine at all, just the rabies vaccine at that time. So probably stramonium worked well, but who knows? Case 3. This patient, the first time I started seeing was January 13, 2023. And the chief complaint was seizures and digestive troubles. The general history is a female mixed schnauzer, 10 months old, presented with cluster seizures, 3 to 5 in a day. Her seizures began early in life, around 2 months old, with focalized seizures. She was hospitalized several times, and the vaccination protocol continued with her. Even though she was having seizures, the vaccination process was going on. She had tenesmus and receding stools. The owners noticing each time she was trying to defecate that seizures were much more pronounced. This patient started with my husband, treated started the treatment with acupuncture and herbs during 2 months approximately. And because the problem was appeared to be vaccine related, he thought homeopathy could be much more effective and could provide a faster resolution of the symptoms at that time. So I started seeing her in January 13, 2023. So almost 2 years now. That was my repertorization. This patient had a lot of allopathic drugs, probably 2 or 3, and she had a lot of aversion to be touched. That patient, every single time, the owners were very good observers, and they told me after each single vaccine, the pet gets worse. So I added the rubric, and the rubric ailment for mental shock, the constipation rubric, difficult stool, receipt stool, because it was very prominent in her, and a lot of weakness in the lumbar region in this patient. So I started with silica 200C, 1 single dose, and Q1, 5 drops diluted in 2 ounces of water, 1 dropper, 24 hours daily. The patient, this picture is a real picture of the patient, and she was like just lying down and having a lot of pain sometimes, and heavily, well, not a lot of drugs, but she was really not present in the moment. She was like sedated with the drugs, the conventional drugs. In 2023, when I presented this case, she was on silica Q7, 5 drops, diluted in 2 ounces of water, 1 dropper every 24 hours, and redosed at 200C when needed. No more conventional medication at this point. And now she was allowed to be touched, and the expression was more present, much more focused, and in her body, able to play and interact a little bit with another dog from the family. Recently, in 2023, also the previous year, after probably in December, I moved her to ferrum silicatum based on some change of symptoms. And now she's on carcinosin cum cuprum, and she's doing really well. However, silica, the first remedy, was a very good remedy for her. Okay, I'm gonna show you from being spacey and not interacted and not allowed to be touched. I wanna show you how she looked probably 1 year ago. Oh, sorry. And she was not able to bark, and now she was barking. In a keynote of silica is fear of speaking in public. Sorry. Look how she can follow the other dog and interact. She was not able to do that. So it's a great case, still in the progress, and but she's doing really well right now. And no more medications at this time, just homeopathy and no vaccination, of course.
May I
Yes.
say something? I'm sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand. I'm sorry, everyone. Hi, Rosie. It's Elisa. How are you?
Oh,
Um,
fine.
so just with the daily dosing of the Q1, I mean, how long do you typically have them do that? Do you just say, oh, do that and let me know if they have another seizure? You come in with another 200C. When are you then increasing to the next potency? Is there some sort of timeline in there?
No, there's no timeline, just how I perceive the patient and how the owner tells me. Sometimes, for example, in this patient, start having digestive troubles or some skin issues. And that's when I raise the potency, the Q potency. And if sometimes it takes months to change the Q potency. Sometimes it goes faster, but I don't have like a timeline or say every 15 days change the potency or no. It's case dependent.
Okay. So you're
And
looking for the recurrence of the older symptoms?
yeah, and yes, and yeah, she's progressing in the yeah, now the patient is showing much more the digestive part and some other issues related with allergies and how the owners relate with her and how they interact with her, and they tell me now she's acting like when she was a young puppy when I received her. Now I can see her true self.
Great, thank you.
But it's case dependent. I don't follow any rule.
Hi.
Yeah, question?
Yes, hi. I got this case, the last remedy, it shows carcinosin cum cooper, the cooper. How did you decide to give carcinosin and or cooper or together? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, carcinosin concuprum acts when we have a lot of rigidity in the, well, cuprum, it's a lot of rigidity in the system, in the whole body and the mind. And carcinosin, it's sometimes I use in patients with, when I cannot progress anymore in the cancer, I can see something related with the cancer miasm. And probably cuprum could be another good remedy for her at the beginning. In fact, I don't know if in the repertory session shows. Let me check because I don't remember. No, in this section is not shown cuprum, but I have some patients right now under carcinosin cuprum because right now that after finishing the human part, the homeopathic training for humans, I can see some different emotions or give me much more hints or expressions that I was not able to do it when with previous training. So I combine sometimes what the owners tells me or how it mirrors to the patient, and in this case the animal. It's hard to giving you an exact explanation right now, but the case progressed really well. I think it was one only dose, and probably I will go back to ferrum silicatum just to remove some layer of disease. And but not sure. I just try this time and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And
One more question. Thank you for answering that. Explains it. We had years ago at one of the conferences, one of the vets mentioned something I thought was interesting. She said when she found herself treating animals like with cancer, that the owners would come down with cancer too. It was like the whole environment in the house, that there was a sickness that the animal was expressing that somehow was related with the owners. Have you seen that?
Exactly. Yeah. They mirror, right? And they are in. I think we many of us during the pandemic, and we were in a certain condition, and the cancer miasm expressed it out loud for many of us. So yeah, I have used that remedy sometimes and with effect, and sometimes without effect, but like a layer of disease, and some of them have worked well. But still on the process of setting some emotions and mixed behaviors, and how they interact, humans and animals, in this world.
Thank you.
So Dr. Ramirez, just a quick question on that case. So the dog exhibited tenesmus. So from an owner standpoint, what are they seeing? Or from a doctor standpoint, what do you see on observation? Is it just like straining, or do you see the spasm?
Straining, and the receding stool, like it was like going up again. And it was and it's another keynote that some remedies have, and silica has that too. Yeah, and obviously there are a lot of another keynotes, like the patient had. I didn't put a lot of physicals, specific physicals, but the aggravation with they feel better with warm, they are not thirsty, or things like that. I didn't focus on that. I have the whole history, but I didn't want to show you the boring part. but yeah, there are a lot more why I decided silica or firm silicatum and things like that. Did I respond to your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to you. Okay, case 4. This patient I saw the first time July 30th, 2022, and the chief complaints were seizures. He started at 6 months old with convulsions and began treatment with CBD, phenobarbital, and potassium bromide. He was stable for a couple of months, and then cluster seizures began. Laboratory tests and MRI were done. No signs of specific abnormalities were found. He had strong seizures, and most of the time it appeared he could not see, like blinded. He had always had intermittent diarrhea and or vomiting. Corneal ulcer and cataracts developed at very early age. Several procedures were done, but the response was always very poor. He had months and months of suppressive treatments because there was no regular and expected healing. He used to eat undigestible things, was a pretty demanding dog, needed company, and became angry when he was not able to get outside. His comfort place was inside the house. At that time, that was my repertorization, my company desire for, magnetized desire to be, convulsions, heat during, food and drinks, undigestible things desired, convulsive movements, convulsions, epileptic aura, blindness, the eye cataract, the cornea complaints, and motion involuntary. At that time, I decided to go with calcarea phosphoric at 30C, 2 doses, 12 hours apart, and then Q1. 5 drops diluted in 2 ounces of water every 24 hours. This patient was, as I told you, medicated, and they started he started showing milder seizures after starting the homeopathic treatment. And on September 2022, they don't know what happened, but they developed a perforated ulcer. So a corneal transplant was performed at that time, and the healing response was a little better than the other time when he had the previous ulcers in the past. The owners wanted to know if any other homeopathic remedy could be possible to use instead of going to the hospital and having much more medications with the animal during the hospital. So I sent belladonna 200C on hold and see if it was needed or how it goes. The allopathic medication at that time was reduced and he was doing well, more alive and active, less depressed, and gaining some weight. In January of 2023, after not seeing more improvement under Cal-FOS and having a lot of digestive troubles again, I went to Cuprum Metallicum 30C, 2 doses, 1 hour apart, and Cuprum Metallicum Q1, 5 drops diluted in 2 ounces of water every 24 hours. And in June 24, 2023, the owners noticed a mild ear discharge with the lessening of the allopathic treatments and repeated Cuprum 30C twice. At this point, we had appointments every 3 weeks to evaluate the overall well-being and started going up with the Q potencies. Went on until Q4 and more reduction of the allopathic medication. Every single time the patient gained weight, more active, and became stronger. And that the patient was much more normal and he was much more alive and present in the moment. What made me change the prescription? Because at the very first moment, the owner told me, in the history, in the general history, it appeared he could not see, like blinded. He had always had intermittent diarrhea or vomiting. I should pay much more attention to those symptoms at the beginning of the consultation, the first consultation. If you can see the first repertorization, we have Cuprum here, is the 4th remedy, and it has a lot of blindness. And Cuprum has a lot of digestive issues, especially when the patient is suppressed with allopathic medications. And the allopathic, or with something, and with the suppression of the patient with some other stuff are done, the convulsions come in a harder way. So that's my main reason why I decided to go with Cuprum at that point. And the patient was doing really well at that point. I want to show the 2 videos from this patient, even though he was not able to see really well, probably just spots or who knows. Let me show you. Look this video because it's very awesome how he can see the toy and play with it. Bravo, Pino. Oui, Pino. Oui, Pino. So even though he had a lot of problems with the eyes, he's much better. Okay. Questions?
Comment, Rosie. You mentioned that the patients did better and seems like their seizures went away when they weren't on seizure medicine. The others, they were just decreasing it. In humans, the same way. I found generally we don't cure seizures unless the patient isn't on meds, and usually only in kids. And an interesting thing is a few cases I've seen where the seizures go away, they almost always break out in a rash. It can be a subtle rash, but they always break out in a rash as the seizures are going away. In adults, in humans, it's very difficult because they're all on seizure drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have a seizure, they can't drive for a long time, months. So they won't tolerate any aggravation like you would get with a remedy sometimes. So that's why, in my experience, the adults are just not curable. They won't. You give them a remedy, they have a seizure, and they're like, okay, I'm not gonna. They don't continue.
Yeah.
They're on the drug, they don't want to change it.
Yeah, it's really hard, I guess. Yes. Yeah, and yeah, it's hard. Seizures are hard. And yeah, right now I have a patient on the Barita Foss with a glioma and with a lot of convulsions and just diminished, but still on medication. And it's doing well, but yeah, not able to remove the medication at this point. This patient, we reduced the medication, but we were not free of medication. I couldn't follow this case. I finished with this case in 2023 because the dog got lost, unfortunately. And we don't know what else it could happen.
The seizure drugs really affect the quality of life. I know in humans, there's a study they used to give with febrile seizures, they would put everyone on phenobarbital, And what they found is the kids that were on it versus not had lower IQs. So it really, the seizure drugs have really bad side effects. So even being able to lower the drugs is really a good thing. It improves the patient, the animals, and humans' quality of life quite a bit.
Tim, does fasting do anything for seizures? Can you fasting or no?
Good question. I don't know. I'm very trying. I don't know any. Good question.
So wasn't the ketogenic diet first do some of the seizures for that?
Ketogenic, yeah. Ketogenic diet is useful for seizures, sure, and tracking seizures. It's a treatment.
So if you did homeopathy for adults,
Yeah, for dogs.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's certainly a possibility to lower the drugs. No, they do that because in humans, in kids, if I guess the statistics are about a third of people get controlled on one drug, a third of people need two drugs, a third of people, no matter how many drugs they aren't controlled, those are the people that either try diet or they do neurosurgery to start removing parts of the brain. Which as a, hysterectomy or something, which the side effect of that is more seizures because it leaves hemosiderin deposits in the brain. I heard a neurosurgeon talking about it and chill went up my spine. It's like, really, you're just cutting off drugs of people's brains. And then he admitted, he said, yeah, sometimes it causes more seizures. Like, okay.
There's a couple of comments from the audience. I think Elisa wants to make a comment, and I'm checking to see if there's other questions.
May I
And I
speak,
think,
Susan?
yeah, just hang. And the other thing too, I don't think it's a secret that Todd Cooney, who many of us know, came to homeopathy because of his seizure disorder, and they were going to bisect his brain, and he didn't think that that was a really good idea, and went through some lovely homeopathic prescribing and has been seizure free and had some other things shift in his world. So and again, I don't, that's not a big secret to anybody here in this audience. That's quite well known.
Yeah, I have a friend, another veterinarian who has been free of seizures for maybe 5 years. Yeah, treated with homeopathy. Yep. So,
Liza, you had something?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to mention, and I think I actually presented this case a few years ago, but I had a case of a patient with seizures who I'm actually still treating after suppressed skin symptoms. And this patient had the peculiar symptom. He would vomit every time right before a seizure. And I gave him Cuprum metallicum because that's sort of a keynote of that particular remedy. And so I really rang true with what you said, discussed with this case, Rosie. I also just wanted to briefly mention another case that I actually presented just a month or so ago to you guys, another case of a dog with seizures from suppressed skin symptoms where the skin symptoms started to come back out again. And I saw that in your case where with the little Westie, where all the skin symptoms started to come back. So I just kind of wanted to comment, I've absolutely experienced that. And I think it's relatively common. In fact, Tim and Bob and I were having a discussion about skin symptoms being suppressed and leading to seizures. And, it also looks like GI symptoms. It's just tends to be a pattern that we see a lot. Wouldn't you guys agree?
I see a lot post-vaccine as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I
don't see how
Go ahead.
Well, I just don't see how anybody cannot make the connection with the rabies vaccine and seizures, especially when they look at cases like the one Rosie presented of the dog with the laxus. How can you ignore that?
Also flea control products too.
yes.
One of the things that people forget, and it can sometimes help, when we talk to clients, and it can help our own interpretation, is when you talk to the neuro people, they talk about assessing these cases over 3 seizure intervals before you can really make a claim about the seizure, the response of the seizure. So if you have a dog that, you know, had one seizure, who knows? If you have an animal or, you know, that has a seizure every 4 months, we have to look at that, you know, you know, 3 times 4 months is 12 months. If we have an animal that has a seizure, you know, every 3 days, then we're looking at what happens after 9 days. And so they could still be having seizures, but they don't have them every 3 days, you know. So if they have them every 5 days, now our seizure interval is like, you know, 2 weeks, and that can really help. That can really help with the expectations of the owners, and as well as with our expectations as clinicians about assessing these, you know, these things. And it also helps us have conversations with the conventional neuro people too, you know, to be able to yardstick the response.
Yeah.
Dr. Ramirez, I just had a question about, you know, so if you get your dogs off of the flea prevention products, you know, because you don't want them to have any more seizures, but then the trouble is there any good natural things that you can do to prevent or treat tick bites in the animals, like naturally?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things. In my place, we have a lot of ticks, especially, so we treat a lot of patients with bleeding problems. So all the products, we have a lot of patients with a lot of products, and we can see weird things happening with the conventional medications, but with natural, we started using from 1 year ago a flea and tick.
Like the disc.
Yeah, like a disc. It is working really well so far. And I love the product.
The brand name is of the flea and tick disc?
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
The other thing that we need to consider too is that attraction to fleas and ticks is susceptibility to fleas and ticks is
Exactly.
is an indicator of ill health. And so one of the things that you might find is, you know, changing the food makes a difference sometimes. Looking at all of the other things that we as clinicians know are those subtle signs of ill health, and putting that into the equation when we're looking at them. And as these guys respond to both changes in their diet and supplements, and also to the homeopathic medicines, or the medicines homeopathic to their case, we see less fleas and less ticks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. Yes.
There's also been some really interesting work done. The anthroposophic people, interestingly, and biodynamic folks do a lot of work with ashing for fleas and ticks and other things, where we actually make a preparation of the pest itself and spread it, not with the intention of kill everything, but with the intention of please move it out of the environment, and you know, go over there, but not necessarily kill you dead. And we found also that you couldn't tell. It's less and less obvious now, but certainly when we first started seeing people spraying for mosquitoes and spraying, you know, for the bigger killing stuff, that where they treated mosquito spraying and some of the caterpillar spraying, where my practice was in Pennsylvania, I would have people complaining about ticks, and they come in, and you know, their animals would be getting ticks, or their husbands, or they would be working in the woods and be getting ticks. And at the beginning, you could tell them to within 1/8 of a mile where they were in the timber, because those had been areas that had been treated for other species. And so one of the things that happens is, if we make a situation where we kill off without thinking about it that other species, something else is going to come take the space up, and that can be part of the overall thing too.
Susan, I wonder if there's any remedies that would be helpful. I know we had a talk years ago by a guy who used agricultural homeopathy, Kavaraj. He actually wrote a book.
Yeah.
Homeopathy for farm and garden. And
Well,
basically, there were like aphid infestations. He would find like ladybug, and that's there's a homeopathic remedy made from ladybug, and you would
absolutely. Yeah.
you're around the root of the tree, the aphids leave. So I wonder
Yep.
if there's like a remedy that would be like a predator of the ticks or something that would, I don't know. If
Well,
anyone-
there's that, and there's also the susceptibility of the individual and the environment. And so, some of the rubrics that I've found helpful over time are rubrics like lousiness. Even though they're not lice, they're similar as well. There's been some clinical stuff, and it's actually, the old dead guys wrote about it. Staph aureus is one of the remedies that's often used in a rather rote way. Either internally or often in a topical spray for some of these pest infestations and stuff as well. And I find variable success with that over the years, but yeah, it's
Hi,
sorry.
everyone. Dr. Archana here, and I had a question in the chat, so I was asked to ask it here. But I have several patients who are becoming vets, and like they're really having a hard time in how animals are treated in schools. I mean, just they have to go through the whole process of training. One of them is actually vegan, so it's extremely hard for her. And so I was wondering, because she has 12 animals right now while she's going to undergraduate school. And I'm wondering if animals can be exempted at all from vaccines, because she said she has to get them vaccinated to take them to certain places and into parks and into places. I just don't know if people can get exemptions for the animals because things are so controlled now for humans even.
They can.
They can.
The short answer is that it's possible. The longer answer is it's complex and it depends on the individual situation. And the other consideration is, what do you want to exempt them for? So some situations, you're not going to get, you're not going to get exempted from a rabies vaccine and expect to cross some of the state lines or travel internationally. That's very unlikely going to happen. With rabies vaccine, we can certainly postpone it. Some of the places we back that up with the titer, which may or may not do anything, and the client, needs to be willing to take the risk that they may get fined for, not having an appropriately vaccinated animal. It's easier with vaccines other than rabies to write exemptions, and the situation depends a lot on the wording of that, and it also, in my experience, has depended on the attitude of the pet owner and the veterinarian, when dealing with the regulatory authority. It's a way bigger conversation, and I'm sure that other clinicians, veterinarians in the audience have different experiences. But if you want to get with me off list or off meeting, I'm happy to talk to you or the other people about how they might work around doing that.
And I'm sorry, who's speaking right now? I wasn't
Oh,
sure.
sorry, it's Susan Beal.
Susan. Okay, great, Susan. How would I get in touch with you?
I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, thank you. And where are you located?
I'm right now in Southern Ontario, but I practiced stateside for 30 years or so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hi, this is Francine. Just one, I don't know if this is a good suggestion or not. It was something I read. It's supposed to be helpful. For I don't know about ticks. I know for fleas, there's a substance called diatomaceous earth. It's like a white, it's like a calcium powder. And I know, because I have a couple of cats that come in and out, that I'll take it and I'll just put it in like a salt shaker thing. We put it around their tail area and around their neck ear area. I don't know, I haven't had much problem with fleas with them, but that's supposed to, because it's a sharp, very small molecule, that it supposedly punctures the bodies of the fleas. So you can look it up. It's supposed to be good for humans to eat it. Diatomaceous earth.
It can be really effective as a desiccant because it disrupts the chitinous area. The challenge with DE is it's also really dusty, and it can also be a really bad respiratory irritant, and it also plays hell on any of the beneficial insects and earthworms and stuff out there. The other thing about it is that it has limited efficacy on all the non-adult parts of the flea cycle, and sometimes those are the biggest issues. We can figure out how to kill adult fleas or do birth control with fleas with some of the insect growth regulators and in the environment. The challenge is that there's not much out there that kills up those cocooned up fleas, and that can be the difficulty too. That was a great presentation, Rosie.
Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Yeah, thank you.
Great job,
It was
Rosie.
super nice cases.
Thank you so much. Well, anything else or another question or something?
It's just good to see you, Rosie.
Yeah, nice to see you too. See you probably next year at the conference.
Yep.
Yep. Have fun, guys. I have to go.
Thank you. And once again, thank you very much for Dr. Ramirez's excellent lecture. And speaking of next year, we will reconvene the next meeting of the joint session of the Illinois Homeopathic Medical Association and the AVH is going to be Saturday, March 15th, 2025. So you can just mark your calendar, Saturday, March 15, 2025. And have a great holiday season, y'all. Go. Just go to webinar and end. Click on it. No, click on it and quit. And end webinar.